Excellent. Well, I appreciate you guys for joining us today. Our special guest is going to be Lisa with Collective Discovery. We're so excited to have Lisa here talking to us about her journey and her evolution as an entrepreneur. And we're thankful for the Open We Stand movement. You know, the group has been growing in strength and is really providing silver linings, practical advice, and positive motion and stories. And that's just what the community is all about. So we're so thankful that everybody could be here today. My name is Adam Griggs. I'm going to be your moderator today. I'm the founder of Clarify. And then I'd love to have Rachel and Jonathan introduce themselves, and then Lisa will get to you if that's all right.
Yeah, I can start. I'm Rachel McCool. I'm from Godaddy, and I am a community manager with Godaddy. I've been with the company for over 5 years now, and I manage the online community and community programs. And I am thrilled to have Lisa as the guest because I've known her actually probably I've known Lisa as one of our GoDaddy customers for maybe the longest that I've worked with customers. So she's amazing, and I'm super excited to have her share her story.
Can't wait to hear it. My name is Jonathan, and I am an engagement manager at GoDaddy, and I work on the brand side. So I am on our social media pages, our LinkedIn, our Instagram account, doing everything from engaging with customers to escalating issues to building strategies for conversations for events. And as 2020 happened, social and community has been working a lot more closely together. So it's been a really great experience for me it makes sense, like it makes perfect sense. But it's so nice to see the real, constantly be shown the value of what this community brings to this community.
Wonderful. Well, Lisa, I would love for you to go ahead and just give us a little snippet about you and how you came to be yourself in Collective Discovery and your journey.
Oh, well, I was thinking about this, like, how best to describe my life. I have been the victim of good fortune, right place, right time, things in a number of ways. I was born in New York, but my parents moved to the West Coast when I was tiny and happened to settle right in the heart of Silicon Valley because my dad was in the semiconductor industry. So I literally grew up at ground zero, at like 4 miles from Apple headquarters and 4 miles from Google headquarters, where they are now, right? So like those things weren't there then, but right in the middle of where the action is. And so exposed to science and tech at an early age. My dad's an engineer, and my mother was a children's librarian. So I was quite exposed to books and writing, and she was big in art. And so I've managed to get both sides of that sort of environment. And I thought I wanted to be a writer and an artist. But and this was in the 70s, when I was in high school, and I was told, writing and art doesn't make a lot of money, but you're really good at math for a girl. You should go into like science and technology. And I wound up getting a degree in electrical engineering and went to work in high tech, and then went back part-time and got a master's in computer science. But I never really gave up the writing and art thing. That's always been a separate part of my life. And so I've managed to have multiple things going on at once. So I worked in high tech for about 20 years. And then another piece of right place, right time, I was managing an IT department when the web as we know it was kind of the new thing. And they said, you have to have a website. We all said, what's a website? And so I learned about it when it was a brand new thing, started doing websites as a hobby. My kids' school and my father-in-law had a machine shop, and they didn't really need a website, but they had one in, the mid-90s kind of a thing. And that became a second career. So when I left high tech, I wound up having a freelance web design business. Who would have guessed, right, that when I was in high school, that 20 years later, there'd be a job that was tech and some writing and some art. And so that's been a great career for about 22 years doing the freelance. So there's a lot more in between all that, but that's kind of the basic background.
The journey in a nutshell. No, I love it. Your topic today that we kind of discussed ahead of time was evolving into the next best version of yourself. So I really love that you started with you were a victim of good fortune. I mean, really, that is how a lot of people start finding the momentum in life. When you're open to opportunities and you allow yourself to evolve and learn, you find out that you like something and you run with it. And that's so powerful. So I'd love to hear kind of a little bit about what took you from, I mean, really, what were the points, what took you from studying electrical engineering and moving towards your creative passions, so that it was more of a full-time gig for you?
Well, I think what is super interesting to me is that, again, in high school, I was told, well, writing and art are really great hobbies, but not great careers. And at the same time, I was told, you're good at math for a girl. I also had a counselor tell me that girls don't take calculus and physics, which I ignored him, fortunately. But I never really gave up on the writing. And I had jobs in high tech that involved writing. I managed quality, where I was writing policies and procedures, stuff like that. And I always did some sort of freelance work. So we had a very tiny local newspaper for a couple of years where I wrote some articles. I had some other freelance magazine type things. I wrote a book that I tried to get published, which was about women in engineering, and was told that there wasn't a market for it back in 1990. I was trying to encourage more women to go into it. I eventually published a book about 6 years ago on how to find, hire, and partner with the right web designer for you. So it was targeted at people who might hire me, or somebody like me. So I had that book. Somebody at GoDaddy found the book and said, hey, you want to write for our blog? So I've been writing articles for GoDaddy for almost 6 years. So I've always managed to keep up this writing. And I also learned that most web designers don't really market themselves as writers, or maybe they don't like to write, they like to program. So I wrote a lot of content for clients. And about 2 years ago, I finally sort of branched out and offered that as a separate service. So now I write content for people who hire other web designers. And so I'm back to the writing finally after all these years, as trying to make it a more of a full-time job. And one of the really interesting things about the writing was that I decided that maybe there was a way to sort of productize that, like figure out how to turn my writing methodology for how I write content into something I could sell to people who are sort of the do-it-yourself crowd. Maybe they can't afford to hire if they can't afford to hire a professional web designer, they probably also don't want to spend the money on a professional writer. So trying to figure out, what can I sell for $20 or $50 that a do-it-yourself person could use to kickstart their own content writing. So okay, I'm 63 and suddenly I'm starting like a completely new project, new side to my business, which has been a huge learning experience, because I'm doing stuff I never had to do in terms of how you market, right? If you're an established web designer, most of your work often comes from referral. Other people know me, or other clients send people. I'm trying to market a small product to people that could be anywhere. They don't know me. There's no referral work that way. So I'm having to learn about how do you build an audience? How do you do that? For people who are in the web business, we've all put lead magnets on client websites. Give me your email and download this free something in the hopes that will lead them to business. I've implemented that for years. I've never had one. I never needed one. Now I have one. I have a lead magnet. So I'm learning how to do, stuff that my clients have done for years. So that's been super exciting, actually, just to learn all this new stuff.
That's awesome. You are just such an exciting example of somebody that's continuing to evolve and reinvent yourself. I mean, 63, you're just getting started. You can just hear.
Well, on that, this is my third, what I want to think is my third major career. 20 years of this and 20 years of this, and it's a luxury, actually, to say I'm going to take a flyer on something now. My husband's retired, my kids are adults and out of the house. We're not paying college tuition and other, crazy large expenses. So it's a low risk for me to do something that I think sounds fun and interesting and gets me back to, what I've always liked to do. I have a care plan business with websites where I do the ongoing maintenance for clients. I'm still managing 105 websites. So I've still got my hands in that game quite a bit.
I love it. You're balancing it while evolving, though. I mean, you can hear the excitement in your voice. You can hear that you're excited about.
I am. It's
Re-
been really fun. You know, one of the so I'm taking this class on how to build and develop an online course. And in the class, we get many small assignments. And one of them, for instance, was join a number of Facebook groups around whatever topic or the audience. Not that you can sell anything to the groups, right? The groups are all pretty strict about no sales pitchy stuff. But to learn about your potential audience, to be helpful and answer questions, and get more insight into what people are looking for. So I've joined groups that I never would have joined. One of them is, small business women solopreneurs who are just starting their business, and they're kind of helping each other. I'm trying to do X. Who knows how to do that? Or what's a tool that you found? And so I'm observing and then trying to be helpful where I can be, but I'm not allowed to sell myself. And so that's been really fun and interesting. And I have learned a lot from these other women. And I used to think, well, I started my business years ago. I'm not really a new business owner, but now I kind of am a new business owner, a new piece of business owner.
There's always something exciting about starting new. I love that you not only made the decision to continue and learn and educate and evolve yourself, especially right now when the world's crazy, but you've already given us some practical advice, which is engaging small communities that maybe you wouldn't have thought of before in a genuine way, where you're actually learning from them and they're learning from you. And that reciprocation is helping elevate your new brand in your direction. I mean, I think we keep coming back to that same scenario where your community is really what's going to drive your next step forward, especially when you're evolving into yourself. I mean, we talked about trust falls and the community being our trust falls in an earlier episode. And it's such a powerful thing to be part of a community, especially if you're stepping into a new area or a new light in your life, and it might be scary or you're taking a risk. You're going from handling websites and doing web copy to doing something that's, more driven to the DIY crowd. And it's at a smaller scale, but at a wider scale at the same time, smaller product, wider scale. And that can be frightening, that can be scary. So at 63, I love that you're excited about it. I love that you're getting out there and you're doing this again, because no matter what age you are, everybody's having an opportunity to reflect on how this year went and what their future looks like. And seeing a story like yours, Lisa, is powerful because it shows people that there's still opportunity and there's still communities and there's still the availability to evolve into your next, best self.
One of the interesting things, and we had talked about this before, the whole concept of a unique selling proposition, or actually even better, a unique value proposition, right? You're not trying to sell something, you're trying to provide value. And there are many times people, their unique value proposition is I'm the cheapest, or I'm the fastest, or free delivery, or there's some sort of tangible numerical thing. And I like to say that in the content writing world, my unique value proposition is that I was a web designer for a long time. So maybe not only have I picked apart 1 million websites, I've just crossed the threshold of 700 websites, which was pretty exciting. But in theory, I have more exposure, experience, knowledge, whatever, about what content works on a website. So when you hire a professional writer, of course, they're an excellent writer technically. That doesn't necessarily mean that they know a lot about how people read on the internet, the thought processes, traversal of navigation, So I'm hoping that that's, for me as a UVP, is the web experience makes me a better web content writer. And yes, I have some writing experience too. That's helpful.
But it's sorry, I've got to jump in here. It's that same thing where it's everyone, I'm studying to be a doctor versus I've had a month in the field, right? It's that whole thing where it's like, you can have all the training and all the experience, in the like learning about something or learning about, I know how to formulate the sentences, I know how to make something buzzy. But if you have the actual experience of, I've been on websites, I've been on web platforms, and I can tell you right now, you can write, you can write beautiful 600 words. They're not going to read 400 words of them. Like that kind of not, you know what I mean? Like that sort of knowledge is the thing. And I found, even working in social media and explaining, getting some propositions for some larger campaigns or larger idea, and not even talking about GoDaddy. I have my dog has an Instagram account. I always, anytime a sponsorship or someone reaches out and they say like, here's something that we want to work with you on, the only ones that I will pick are the ones that really, really solve a problem or really, really address what people in my community will need, right? Because I'll sit here and I'll go, okay, you can tell me that I can sell, Furminator or some, spray, some spritz, all you want. But like, if I don't use it, if there's no value in it, if I don't have any experience with it, what does my word actually say? I have this following, but I've never used this product. I can't say that I know that it does any good outside of the fact that I have a discount code for you. So I think it adds so much value to your value proposition that you have this web experience. And I think that's so incredible for a lot of people who might have thought, I've pigeonholed myself in this one thing, right? Like I'm a web designer, I'm a web developer. I've done it for 20 years. How could I possibly go into content writing? How could I possibly like make that leap? And you are such a great example of like, no, these skills are all applicable. You looked at writing with a scientific mind and you thought, how can I build a formula that people will be able to learn from for an art, for something that you can't really teach that way? I've had a lot to say throughout this whole thing.
Here's what I'm really enjoying is, first of all, I'm so proud of the name. My writing service is called MuchaDo About You, the riff on the Shakespeare. And I actually have a registered trade. I have several trademarks because I have a trademark on Web Diva, because back in the 90s when all the web people were webmasters, and I thought that sounded too much like Dungeons and Dragons. I married a D&D guy, but that's another story. But I said, I don't want to be a webmaster. I'm the web diva. And it was kind of a joke, and it really stuck. And then some years later, I registered the trademark. So when I came up with this MuchaDo About You, and miracle of miracles, the domain name was available and all that, and I trademarked it. And my focus on the writing is really the writing about you, the client, but in the format of benefits to the customer. So we don't talk about, I'm great because I've been a web designer. It's my experience as a web designer helps you do X, helps you look better, gives you insight into how people read the internet. And so whenever I take on a new writing client, the first project that we do is what I call the Why Choose Me bullets. And we come up with 4 or 5 statements that translate their expertise, their approach, their methodology, their whatever, into what are the benefits for the client. So I'm just working now with somebody that's an accounting firm. Our holistic approach of blah, 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 blah leads to, for you, less stress, more time, less money, what are the benefits for you? And I put a lot of thought into, I have an intake questionnaire and I review their current website and we speak and I come up with this stuff. And with this accounting firm, I just literally yesterday said, here are the 5 bullets. And one of the guys wrote back and he said, it's like you've known us forever. That is success for me, that I've figured out what their message is and how to portray it in 5 bullets of here's who we are and here's why you should hire us, because it's good for you, not hire us because we're good, hire us because it's good for you. And so that's
Lisa, I'm sorry to interrupt. I've got to jump into because I'm dying to comment on this.
It's so hard to stay quiet.
I know it is. It's really hard to stay quiet. Well, first of all, I mean, ever since I've known Lisa and like known her story, what she did even in the tech industry early on, that was pioneering. I mean, that was amazing. And you getting electrical engineering and going back to school for your computer science MBA or master's degree. I mean, that in itself. But you continuing to evolve yourself, I think is so inspirational, because so many people don't do that, and they get stuck in what is comfortable, but a lot of times not happy, right? A happy place. And ever since I've known Lisa, like she always pushes past the boundaries that a lot of people put around themselves. And also the other thing I want to note is that Lisa, because I'm on Facebook with her, is incredibly creative. Like, she does a lot of really cool creative art projects on the side and stuff. And I think tapping into that really helps to evolve yourself into like the happy place. Is that if you can do things, even if it's on the side sometimes, but at least you're doing something that you love to do, which helps to fuel like your regular days, your business days. But the couple of things that you pointed out in connection with your writing and value is so important. And if you cannot portray to future clients or customers, the value that you bring to them, they're going to go somewhere else. And then the other thing is, so yesterday we had our monthly virtual meetup, and Brian La Liberty, who Adam actually introduced me to, did a really good job of talking about value and talking about differentiation, and just really making sure that you're leading your business. And one of the things that you pointed out, Lisa, about just being part of communities and the value of being part of communities. And even for people who are really experienced coming into a community where you're like, oh, I've got this, I know a lot of things. And it's like, surprise, surprise, right? Like, you learn from other people, because everybody has different experiences. And so like, I love that you are diving into like whole new groups of people, meeting people, because that leads to work for you futuristically as well. And so much of work is trust. And so it's like, you get to know somebody, even if it's not through doing work together, but after a while you're like, I really trust this person, I'm going to have this person do a project for me. Or like, I know somebody else who is looking for a great content writer. Hey, I know Lisa, like Lisa's really amazing, like she can do this for you. So I have no doubt that you are going to be so busy in 2021. And you're going to start like just picking and choosing projects again.
The commentary about, Groundbreaker, as a woman in studying electrical engineering in, the mid 70s, and of course I was the only woman in my classes, and it never really bothered me. And it took a couple of quarters for the guys to see that I was getting A's, and they said, oh, you can be in our study group. I had a professor.
I'm not laughing because it's funny. It's just.
I had a professor tell me, a woman's never passed my class. This was like a senior digital lab. I got an A I stayed up all night before the final, and I got an A, and then he was my best friend during the second quarter of the class. So when I got my master's degree in computer science at Stanford, and in those days, computer science was grad school only, and math department, not engineering department. So, and they took 50 people a year. So I was the only woman out of 50. And I was the only undergrad engineering major. Everybody else was a math major. And so the joke was, I was not the affirmative action for being the only woman. I was the affirmative action for being the only EE in the group. I was also the only one that was married and living in a house with a husband and a family. But I was just always used to being sort of the weird one. And my first full-time engineering job was at Hewlett Packard. I was the first woman in a lab of 200 men engineers, many of whom said, oh, you're so cute, you remind me of my daughter. I wanted to say, you're so old, you remind me of my dad.
Yeah.
I didn't do that. But I always really loved the whole, mentoring and encouraging other women. So I had written this book, about women in engineering, profiling other few women engineers I knew. Couldn't get it published. I wound up teaching a class at the local community college for 10 years called Women in Science and Technology, which was a 1-unit, 1 hour a week. And it's a community college. So these are mostly young women who were going to transfer somewhere else. And it was to get them exposed to engineering. So it was all guest speakers and role models and career exploration worksheets and all that. We had a lot of fun. And every once in a while, people say, "Oh, I'm such a role model." I don't think of it that way. But Rachel, can I tell the story about the tech support person?
Of course, yes.
So on Monday, I called GoDaddy tech support because I needed a database password changed, and it's not something I can do from here. I have to call and say, "Please change this." So the person on the end of the phone, young woman, and she makes the, hi, how are you? She makes the change and she says, "We got to wait a couple of minutes. While we're waiting, tell me how you got into web design." So I tell a little bit of this story and I said, "But there was an interview. You can read it online on the GoDaddy blog." So I point her to the interview and she says, "Oh, this is great." And I said, "You know what? I'm going to be speaking at this LinkedIn group." And it turns out it's somebody who worked with you on this group earlier. Her name is Sam.
Oh yeah. Oh my God.
And so we had a half an hour conversation about what she's studying and her career. And she's like, "Oh my God, you're a pioneer." And
Yeah.
I'm at least her mom's age, maybe her grandmother's age. I don't know. So, but it was a total diversion, but it was like a great, example of like the networking and people are connected and there's always somebody you can help, even strangers that you meet on the phone. It totally made my day. And I had to send Rachel an email about it.
That is so nice to hear. And I think if I have so many takeaways from this call, but my big one is how have you been able to try recently to try and get that book published? I would be fascinated to read that book.
Oh, the book from a million.
All of these first, like you whether you did pioneering things, right? Regardless of the actual title, like you did so many first, and there are so many people who I would love to read more about these experiences and just know, because it's not just that you were like, you helped to invent these technologies, right? Like you helped to literally invent these technologies, and you did it in the face of so many issues that like I can't even wrap my head around a college professor. I can't wrap my head. Mind you, I went to an art school, so even the idea of taking a math class in college, I'm like, what? But I can't wrap my head around it, and it makes me so angry. But to hear from people like you now who have not only achieved so much success, but are still hungry to do new things and to try new things it is like we got to know more. The people need more. The people need more.
It was a really fun experience. So I went to University of California, San Diego. Again, it was a small engineering school at the time. My son, who is 32, went somewhere else for his electrical engineering degrees. He now runs a prototyping lab in my engineering school, like in my old school, in San Diego. And so we haven't been able to go this year, but normally we're down there a couple of times a year. And I get to go back to my old stomping grounds. And my advisor from college, who's got to be in his late 80s, still has an office there down the hall from where my son is. And so the last time we were able to be there, I got to go in and talk to him. "Hey, Professor Lujanani, remember me?" He's like, "I didn't know what to do with you. I'd never advised you. I didn't know what to tell you that was different, but you seem to have done okay." But the engineering school, I had an alumni speaker series a couple years ago, and I went down there to be part of that. And I spoke about, how women engineers can kick blank in the male-dominated field. Giving them advice. And I said, if somebody had given this talk when I was in college, I'd have been the only person in the audience. But we had 20-some people.
Yeah.
So that's been really.
Well, Lisa, I really need you to do an internal GoDaddy talk about this, because we have a lot of women engineers. I actually next year I'm going to serve as the co-president of GoDaddy Women in Technology, our group.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, and
I would invite myself in to speak if you did.
Yes.
Oh my God,
yes.
Good.
I think they would be so inspired to hear your story, and just like because you blazed the way for a lot of the people that are doing what they're doing today. And so anyways, we'll have to talk about that, because I think that they would be really interested in hearing your story.
Exciting.
Yeah, and I think still, I mean, not so much with colleagues at GoDaddy, but I still think that there's a lot of challenges in engineering for women. Still a lot of stereotypical thought process around men versus women, and women, in connection with math. And it's really interesting just to share with you guys. I was really good in math. And even now it's like I work in community, I do people, right? And so it seems like sometimes like I don't, maybe I'm not good with data and stuff. And it's like I actually have that part of me that functions that way, but that's not what I do mostly. And so it's sometimes interesting how we put stuff aside that we're good at and focus on other things that maybe are priority. But anyways, we have to have you come in as a guest.
And of course, obviously, I have some internal connection with GoDaddy because I write for the blog and I have been on the, involved with the Pro Council. But even before the Pro Council was a thing, through a client, I met somebody at GoDaddy and he invited me to come in and meet with a handful of development engineers who were trying to figure out what can we do to better serve the pros who bring many clients here. So this is before Pro Council, before the forum, before all that. I said, sure, that'll be fun because I live 10 miles from the office, so it's convenient. And so I went in to meet and I met with 4 or 5, and I'll say young men. They were probably in their 20s, maybe a couple in their 30s. And they had been told, well, we're going to meet with somebody who's a GoDaddy client, but has a lot of clients through them. They host a GoDaddy. And I walk in and you could just tell they're like, she could be my mom. Yes, I could be. And we had a great talk and I showed them how I track things and they asked a lot of questions. And when we get up to leave, they notice my shoes, which you can't see here, but I have a lot of really interesting Vans tennis shoes. Nice. Of different unusual things. I was wearing my Star Wars Vans. So I looked very professional down to my feet. And then I have and they're like, one guy's like, oh, you're a lot cooler than I thought you'd be.
Oh my God. And you're like, just buckle up. And then you take your blazer off. You got a Lord of the Rings shirt on underneath it. It's just like, oh, you blew your mind.
It's that whole impression of, okay, like women of a certain age are, quote, probably not technical, right? So, Rachel, you and I, like when we were younger, and it's like, you're pretty good at math for a girl.
Yeah.
sort of thing.
I never got that, which I guess I'm lucky that I never got that. And I remember even my boyfriend in college who always said he was horrible at math and stuff. And I said, math is something that you like mentally have to turn on and say like, I can do this, because if you say I can't do this, then you're not going to be able to do this.
Right.
And it's also really interesting with business courses in college, because I took some as well, is that if you don't start out from day number 1 focused on what that's all about, it all builds upon each other. Same thing with engineering, right? Like if you don't learn from the ground up, you're never going to learn it, because like it's progressive. And so I don't know, it was always really interesting to me that like I loved it. It was actually kind of easy for me. And so anyways, I know that we're kind of near the end and it looks like Jonathan has to jump off, but Lisa, like you are just such a rock star, and I have really enjoyed knowing you and just love your energy.
Yeah. I'm going to ride the wave of this for the whole day. This was absolutely fabulous to learn from you. Fabulous.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just going to reiterate a little bit. Rachel, thank you for showing us that Lisa is available to us and introducing me. That is fantastic. Lisa, you've been breaking down barriers your whole life, and you're still doing that, regardless of whether or not it's the way that the public sees or you see yourself personally. You're restarting, reinventing, and evolving, and I love that. And then something that Jonathan touched on was that you're solving problems by bringing your experience and perspective to every time you're meeting with somebody. And so when you do that, you're making big changes for people with that perspective. And those changes are going to help solve problems. And I'm so appreciative for you being here today and sharing your story.
Well, thank you. This was great. It's always fun to talk about yourself. I mean, in fact, that's my work, is helping people talk about themselves, right? In a way that's benefits to others is the hope. So it's fun. I mean, I have enjoyed watching the other people in this series, who've been speaking, some of whom I knew before, and I learned new stuff from them I didn't know about them too, which is pretty cool.
No, it's been amazing. It's been powerful. Thank you everybody for being here. Rachel, Jonathan, thank you for your support. Lisa, thank you for letting us into your world and into your story. I love the vision and the story that you shared today. So hopefully people will watch this, they'll jump on, check out your website. And then I would love to hear if you actually are going to be a speaker at any of the GoDaddy summits, because I'd love to hear more in depth on your story and your journey.
Okay, thanks.
All right, take care. Bye.
Bye. Thanks again.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.